Hello, America and the world. This is Radio Free Market, and I am your host, Michael McKay. We are behind the lines of socialism, my friends, and Radio Free Market is the voice of free people and free markets. Our topic today is how to create new jobs for real with Dr. Walter Block. Welcome, Walter.
Thanks, Michael. I'm delighted to be on your show.
Well, we're at Radio Free Market. We're delighted to have you back again. So everyone, I want you all to be reminded that Dr. Block is a professor of economics at Loyola University in New Orleans. He is a senior fellow at the Ludwig von Mises Institute, the author of Defending The Undefendable, and recently was given the title of Mr. Libertarian. And I think that is far too modest a way of introducing you, but we don't really have time to present all of all of your background, Walter.
Well, I don't think it's far too modest. I think it's far too the opposite, because Murray Rothbard was called that, and I don't know that I deserve to be called the same thing as Murray, but thanks in any case.
Well, it wasn't me that, as you know, it wasn't me that came up with that. That was Lou Rockwell that actually decided that you should be given that particular title. So, everyone, we also have Mr. Aaron Brown with us today, and I want to welcome Aaron. Hello.
Hello. Glad to be back.
All right, great. So, everyone, Aaron Brown attends the University of San Diego Business School and is a 2010 graduate of Mises University. And I want to credit Aaron for not only being our special commentator today, but also for being the chief architect for this show, and the reason that we actually are having this show today. You know, I consider this topic of how to create new jobs for real and the whole discussion about jobs as one of the most foundational topics, and this to be one of the most foundational shows that we will do here at Radio Free Market. And I'm going to encourage our listeners to listen to this show more than once, to take notes, to generously share it with your friends and family and everyone you care about. So now I'd like to hand the show over to get started to Mr. Aaron Brown. Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, so today's show, it's based on an article that Dr. Block wrote. It's called A Primer on Jobs and the Jobless, and it's on Mises.org. It's dated March 9th of 2004. And so our objective today is just to cut through the kind of the impenetrable facade of the jobs question. And our show for the audience is just how do we create new jobs, meaningful jobs. So I think it's useful to begin the conversation, just ask ourselves, what are new jobs good for? What purpose do they serve? So I wanted to ask you, Walter, are jobs desirable per se in and of themselves?
Well, I follow Hazlitt on this, and really jobs are not desirable per se. They're only desirable because of the things that jobs make available, namely goods and services. If we had, if we were living in, what shall I say, nirvana, and manna came down from the heavens in the form of whatever we wanted. You know, you want a Maserati, you get a Maserati. You want a Rolls Royce, you sort of look at the manna and it turns into a Rolls Royce. Then we wouldn't need jobs. Unfortunately, we don't live in any such situation. We live in the real world. And in the real world, we have this thing called scarcity, which means that we have more desires than things that we have. So we have to work for the things that we want that we don't have. I mean, happily, we have some things like air and other, good things. But there are a lot of things that we want that we don't have, and that's why we have to have jobs. So jobs are important as a means toward the end of goods and services, but they're not good intrinsically themselves.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, this first segment is already coming to a very rapid ending. And so before we get into our next question, Walter, what we'll do is we'll take a brief commercial break. And when we come back, folks, we're going to continue with Dr. Walter Block on our conversation of how to create new jobs for real. And so please stay with us. This is Radio Free Market. I'm your host, Michael McKay, and we'll be back in just a minute. Please stay with us. And welcome back, everyone. This is Radio Free Market. We're talking with Dr. Walter Block on jobs. And so I would like to ask Aaron Brown to continue the conversation we were just having. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, so I asked Dr. Block if jobs are desirable in themselves. And I remember Peter Schiff said one time, said the purpose of the economy is it's not to create jobs, it's really to eliminate jobs. It's to make the economy so productive that people don't have to work so often. And in your article, you wrote, Dr. Block, that were jobs in the Soviet Union desirable, where millions of workers were just building things that no one wanted. In that case, jobs are obviously not desirable.
Yes, quite right. Jobs are a means to an end, and the end is things we want. And if the jobs are making things that we don't want, well, then let's say the Keynesian thing of digging holes and filling them up again, then that's silly. I mean, what's the point of working to dig a hole and then fill it up again and keep doing it endlessly when no one really wants a filled-in hole? We want maybe a hole that we can put a building in or something like that. So I think Peter Schiff is quite right in saying that we want jobs, not any old jobs, but jobs that produce things that we want.
At this particular point, I think for me, when I've heard you lecture on this topic before, really brings it out that you really say that the whole focus is on the wrong word. It shouldn't be on the word jobs. It should be on the word production. Would you comment more on that?
Oh, yes, I entirely agree. The key is that we want goods and services. We want food. We want clothing. We want shelter. We want health care. We want, violin lessons and all sorts of things. And that's the focus on productivity. And Hazlitt and Peter Schiff and others, Rothbard, Mises, have made this point very tellingly, that a job is a bad thing. It's a necessary evil, but it's an evil. Nobody really wants a job per se. Now, there is such a thing called play. Like, for example, the people who are now playing in the National Football League, I assume they enjoy doing what they're doing, and they get paid very well for it. So ideally, the key would be that everyone doesn't work at their job, but plays at their job. So all jobs are play jobs. Namely, we all enjoy what we're doing. I'm no National Football League person, but I'm a professor of economics, and I tell you, I love the job. Don't tell my dean, because he'll try to lower my salary, but I really love my job. I get to lecture to very bright young undergraduates and tell them that free enterprise is great. And in effect, I'm really playing for my pay. So I and football players and athletes and I imagine actors and other people and lawyers and accountants and whoever enjoys their job are really playing for pay, and those are the kinds of jobs we want to have.
Okay. Now, Aaron, you and I were talking about this, and you had an example related to General Motors.
Oh, yeah. So, we were all told by the government and the media that, if GM was allowed to go bankrupt, then thousands of people would lose their jobs. But I'm guessing that your objection to that would be, well, were those jobs creating a product that people in fact wanted?
Well, we can't really call them General Motors anymore. I think we have to now call them GM Government Motors because they've been really nationalized. And my understanding is that these guys were getting like $75, $80 per hour when you include their fringe benefits. Now, I'm not going to cast aspersions on GM products, but the point is that not only do we have to create things that people want, but we have to create things that people want at less cost than they value it at. In other words, if we value a car at $5,000 and it costs $10,000 to make that car, then that's not a good job. And in the free enterprise system, what would have happened is that these people would have lost their jobs happily because they were taken over by unions, and I regard unions as some sort of gigantic tapeworm that just sucks out the nutrients from the host. These people would have gone unemployed, and then they might have been picked up by, I don't know, Toyota or Honda, or other automobile manufacturers who pay not 75 or 80 bucks an hour, but 20, 30 bucks an hour. And they're located mainly in the South, which is non-union territory. So it's not that these people would have been permanently unemployed. They would have been saved from the tapeworm of unionism, and they would have got jobs at salaries that are more congruent with their productivity levels, whereas now they were paying way more than their productivity levels. I assume their productivity levels are something like 20 or 30 bucks an hour. But if they're paid much more than that, there's only one way to go, and that's that the company that's employing them is going to lose money and go broke. And the only way they can stay in business is if the government supports them. But this is very bad. It's as if instead of paying them to dig holes and fill them up again, we're paying them to produce, let's say, good cars for the sake of argument, but at twice the cost of the value that we place on those cars. So not only does a job have to produce stuff that we want, but it has to produce stuff that we want at a price that is fitting with the value that we place on it.
So for our listening audience, I want to clarify something. These first few questions are the foundation for wanting to know what is going on in the jobs market. We want to make sure that everyone is asking the right questions that get at the root of what creates prosperity. So to finish off these introductory remarks and questions, I want to read a quote from the article that you wrote, Dr. Block, and how it captures the core issue perfectly, in my opinion. You write, imagine a world where radios, pizzas, jogging shoes, and everything else we might want continuously rain down like manna from heaven. Would we want jobs in such a utopia? No, we would devote ourselves to other tasks, basking in the sun, etc., that we would undertake for their intrinsic pleasure. Instead of praising jobs for their own sake, we should ask why employment is so important. The answer is because we exist amidst economic scarcity and must work to live and prosper. That's why we should be of good cheer only when we learn that this employment will produce things people actually value, are willing to buy with their own hard-earned money. And this is something that can only be done in a free market, not by bureaucrats and politicians. That's the end of your quote. Now, I know that summarizes and actually reiterates some of the things and comments that you made earlier, but when we were crafting this show, we thought that the way you phrased that particular statement was so vitally important, we wanted to reiterate it, even if you did say it earlier. So thank you very much for that. And Aaron, I'm going to let you just leap forward onto the next topic while we still have time in this segment. Go ahead.
All right. So with that frame of mind, we want to begin the meat of the article, and you laid out a couple of points, and you started with the minimum wage. And I think we're all kind of taught to believe that the minimum wage is kind of I actually had one of my friends say, we've chosen to live in a society where we have a certain minimum standard of living, and that's why we have the minimum wage. So first I want to define what it is. The minimum wage, for our listeners, is a government law that forces business people to pay their employees no less than a certain wage. And if you're caught paying less than that, the government will either fine you or force your business to close. And again, Walter, we're told that the minimum wage helps the economy, and specifically poor people. It helps poor people, right? That's what we're told. How does the minimum wage hurt those very poor people that it's supposed to help?
Well, the minimum wage, most people when they think of the minimum wage, they think of it as a floor under wages, and the higher you push it, the higher wages get pushed. So if we have a minimum wage of $4 an hour, no one can go below the floor of $4 an hour, but that's pretty niggardly, so let's raise it to $5 an hour. Now we raise the minimum wage to $5 an hour, and everyone gets paid $5 an hour. Isn't that great? But wait, we can raise it to $6 and $7. I think it's now $7 and change. So the higher we raise it, the higher wages are at the low end of the income job pyramid. That is the erroneous theory. The correct theory is that jobs are, minimum wage is more like a hurdle over which you have to jump in order to get a job in the first place. So if the minimum wage law is $5 an hour and your productivity is $4 an hour, well, then anyone who hires you at $5 an hour when you're only adding to their bottom line $4 an hour, it's going to cost you, the employer, $1 an hour. And if you hire people like that, you're going to lose money. And if you hire too many like that, you're going to go broke. So
Right.
the minimum wage law is really not a law that raises wages. It's a law that cuts off people whose productivity is below the minimum wage level. Now, one easy way to see this is suppose, if it were really true that the minimum wage law could raise wages, why stop at $5, $6, $7, $8 an hour, $10 an hour? Why not make it $1,000 an hour? Why not have a minimum wage law for $1,000 an hour, and then everyone will make $1,000 an hour, and wouldn't that be great?
Right.
Well, the proponents of minimum wage law never follow the logic of their argument, because if we had a minimum wage law of $1,000 an hour, and the only people who have $1,000 an hour productivity in them are people like, I don't know, Tom Cruise or Nadal, the tennis player, most of us, virtually all of us, would be unemployed because we're just not worth $1,000 an hour. Our productivity is not $1,000 an hour. If our productivity were $100 an hour, and that's pretty good, you have to be pretty good to have $100 an hour productivity, and the employer was forced to pay you $1,000 an hour, he'd lose $900 an hour on you, and that's not a viable situation.
So we're going to talk more about this issue of minimum wage, because I think this is a fundamental issue also that most people have a very incorrect understanding of. And I thank you very much for bringing out these points, Dr. Block. So we'll get a bit more into this when we come back from our break. So everyone, please stay with us. This is Radio Free Market, and I'm your host, Michael McKay. We're talking with Dr. Walter Block about how to create new jobs for real. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. And welcome back, everyone. So, Dr. Block, before the break, we were talking about the minimum wage and how it hurts the very people that it's supposed to help. You gave the analogy of, let's say, a minority worker or a young person as being like a porcupine, and that the minimum wage harms these minorities in the same way that removing the porcupine's quills harms the porcupine. I think this is a very instructive example that you've presented in some of your literature. And can you share a bit more of that with us?
Yes, there are certain animals, like the porcupine, that would be very helpless without their quills. Other animals that would be helpless without their compensating differential. The deer has fleetness of foot. Otherwise, if it was slow, it would be slaughtered. The skunk has, well, you can imagine what the skunk has, but if it didn't have that smell, it too would be a victim. Well, what does a minority teenage worker have? What ability does he have in order to get a job when people are suspicious of him or maybe even prejudiced against him? What he has is the ability, in the free market that is, to work for a lower wage. So if there were an employer who was looking askance at this, say, young black teenage worker and saying, well, do I really want to give this kid a chance? If the kid could come up and say, look, like a Horatio Alger type of story, look, give me $1 an hour, stinking lousy $1 an hour. Let me work for you. I'll work for you for a week for $1 an hour, and I'll show you that my productivity is $5, $6, $8, $10 an hour. And after the week, you can raise my wage if you want to keep me, because if I'm really going to add to your bottom line and only take $1 an hour, it's to your advantage. And I think that having this ability to say this would help a young kid get a job where the employer might not give him the job. But with the minimum wage law, it would be illegal for the employer to go along with that. If he paid the kid $1 an hour just to give him a chance, he'd go to jail for it, or he'd be fined, or he'd be forced to shut down. Mm-hmm. So what the minimum wage law does is takes away the ability of a weak economic actor, akin to a weak animal without the quills or the smell or the fleetness of foot. And this is very despicable to pick on the lowest members of society or the economy, people who have the lowest productivity. Now you might ask, well, why, if the minimum wage law is so lousy, if it's taking away the ability of workers to offer employers this this sort of a deal to work for a low wage just as a trial period. Well, why do we have the bloody law in the first place? And the answer to that is one of my least favorite institutions, second to government perhaps, is unions. See, when a union goes to the employer and says, look, we're making $20 an hour, we need 25, the first thing that the employer thinks of is, well, let me fire a few of these high-priced workers and hire a few dozen low-wage workers, and then, the skilled workers can be sort of foremen for the unskilled workers. But the last thing that the union wants is for the employer to start looking for low-skilled alternatives, and they call them scabs, and they used to beat them up. But now they're much more sophisticated, and they've come up with a law, the minimum wage law, which cuts this off at the root. It doesn't enable the employer to start firing union workers, high-paid skilled workers, and start hiring many more unskilled workers to take their place.
So you're saying when we look at this logically, the minimum wage actually, it creates a semi-permanent sector of unemployment, and it harms really the whole of society, but particularly weak economic actors.
Precisely. The unemployment rate for overall is 9.6, 9.7, something like that. According to the shadow statistics, which I think are much more accurate, the overall employment rate for society is something like 19 or 20%. I might be a bit off.
Actually, it just went over 22%.
Oh, 22%. Well, thanks.
Yeah, John, and for our listeners, Dr. Black just referred to something we've encouraged our listeners to look into. This is shadowstats.com, and it's run by a gentleman by the name of John Williams, and I encourage you to go to his website at shadowstats.com and download some of the free data that he has, and it outlines how the government has systematically changed the accounting procedures over the last 40 years, so that what we are actually looking at in statistics that we see reported are not actually the same kind of accounting methodologies that were used back in the 1950s, for example. So they've doctored these various different metrics from labor statistics and inflation and CPI and so on and so forth. It's an invaluable site. I recommend everyone to look into it. So I'm sorry I interrupted Aaron and Walter. Please go ahead.
No, that's quite a very important contribution. I hadn't looked at that for a while, so I was a little outdated. I thought it was 19 or 20%. I'm happy to be corrected that it's 22%. But the unemployment rate for male black teens is 50%, 50, not 15, but 50.
Gosh.
50%, which is horrendous, and I think a lot of that is due to the minimum wage law, and it might conceivably even be higher when you take into fact the phenomenon called the discouraged worker phenomenon. And this is the point is that the way the government counts unemployment is you have to be actively looking for a job. But if you've been actively looking for a job and not finding one for a year or so, and the duration of unemployment, even for adult workers, is now very high in our present depression, recession. So if you're discouraged and you're not even looking for a job, then by the magic of statistical lies, you're no longer unemployed. So the real unemployment rate, when you take this into account, is perhaps even higher.
Okay, Walter, I'm going to have to interrupt you. We're going to come into our next break. So everyone, please stay with us, and we'll be back in just a minute. This is Radio Free Market, and we'll be back right after the break.